Are you a business owner looking for real advice and input? You're in the right place. From concept to launch to growth, funding, and beyond. Welcome to Startup Hustle with your hosts. One once sold a business for $150 million. The other, the author of $1 Million Bedroom. Here are your hosts of Startup Hustle, Matt DeCoursey and Matt Watson.
1, 2, 3, 4, 3, 2, 1. 'Cause no one can do it like we do it, like we do it, like we.
And we're back. Another episode of Startup Hustle. Matt DeCoursey here with Matt Watson. Hi, Matt.
What's going on, man?
Oh, just another day in Q time, baby. And, you know, I figured if we were going to talk about businesses and startups that were especially effective at social distancing, we might as well bring some drone people in today. So with us today, we have Sinuhe Montoya of DroneQuote.net. Sinuhe, longtime listener, first-time caller.
Hello, everybody. How's everybody doing out there in post-COVID world, if you will?
Well, is it post yet? We're getting
I like
there.
to think that we're like a minute and 30 seconds into a 2.5 hour movie. So,
oh, that's a good way to look at it. I hope we're a little more than a minute and 30 seconds. But so Sinuhe is the founder of DroneQuote.net, and we'll talk a little bit about that before we get started. Today's episode of Startup Hustle is brought to you by Fullscale.io. We help you build a software team quickly and affordably. So, Sinuhe, you are out there in lovely San Diego, which is always surprisingly cold despite its California billing. I don't understand that. Every time I go out there, I'm like, ugh. But with that, you've built a tidy little business around doing solar panel installation quotes with drones. Let's talk about that for a second before we get started, and give us a little background of what made you get into
I appreciate
that.
you asking. You know, I used to be an in-home sales guy. Before they outlawed, you leaving your house pretty much. And and during that time, I used to sell solar for a solar installer here in the San Diego area. And I'd be going from not house to house, but my appointments would be from one house to the next house, right? And I like to tell people, because I'm scared of heights, I'm 5'6". I didn't like getting on roofs. So I bought a drone because it allowed me to it allowed me to measure the roof and get a good picture of what was going on the roof without having to walk the entirety of the roof or having to carry around a heavy ladder. And I noticed that there was a really positive response from homeowners and from my clientele and from my projects. They were moving a lot quicker, a lot more accurately. I was able to sell a more cost effectively for me because I wasn't having to eat any cost on anything that I'd missed from satellite imagery or not, walking the roof in its entirety. And so one thing led to another. I just saw an opportunity, and I saw the nascent industry of drones really taking off, if you will. And that was back in 2013, 2014. So I started plotting a course for starting a business thereafter.
Matt, do you have a drone?
I've had a couple in the past, and my experience with them was pretty much running them into something and getting them lost or breaking them.
I actually I have a couple comments. First off, I'm 6'4" and I am scared of heights on some levels. Like, I hate being up on really tall ladders. And somehow people always say to me, they're always like, "I'm surprised being so tall, you're afraid of heights." I'm like, yeah, I don't think that has anything to do with it. And then and then actually a quick drone story myself. So I said I wanted a drone, and my wife bought me these little Star Wars training drones, and one of them looked like a TIE fighter, and the other one looked like whichever one Darth Vader flew. I charged them up, and the very first flight, got them up in the air, and immediately flew in a beeline right into the neighbor across the street's
window. Did you break it?
So no, but it was headed in that trajectory, and I saw it break like in my head, and it pinged so loud off. These were little tiny drones. I mean, they were like tiny, but yeah. So I learned a lot, and then I worked my way up to a larger drone, and I learned that they're easy to fly, but they're not easy to fly. So I mean, you can do a lot of. I learned that flying them in a straightforward line was right. Easy, but going backwards in other directions was a lot more complicated.
Well, I mean, what started it for me was I bought this little it was like $100 drone back in 2013. And then I really got infatuated with the flying it, right? It was a lot of fun. And that led to a more expensive drone, and then a more expensive drone. And then finally I sold my motorcycle at the time. It was like a really nice street bike I had, to buy like a $3,500 drone. And that's actually literally what allowed me to bring it into work and actually use it for work. But that drone, I had the family over and everybody was, looking at this new cool toy that I had, and I was wanting to show off in front of everybody, and I flew it right into a tree and smashed it into a bunch of pieces. And this is the drone that I sold my motorcycle to buy. So, it was a really painful event, and everybody was watching.
And you blew it up, right?
Oh, yeah.
Like on
the whole family was over, and right in front of everybody. It was like about 30 feet off the ground. I nipped this tree and just smashed into a bunch of pieces. Yeah, it was great.
Wow. But so my first experience with drones on a commercial level was I used to own an office building, and it backed up to a large open space. And about halfway through my ownership of the building, whoever owned the space piled up the equivalent of 500,000 bags of mulch, like shredded up trees. And they had made this like 50-foot tall mulch pile behind my building. And I had gotten into a dispute with them, and I hired a drone company to come out. And the guy that came out probably had one of the, he said it was like a $5,000 machine. And he flew this thing he was very scientific with it. He had all this different stuff, and he flew it in this grid pattern over a several acre lot. And he came back, but he sent me stuff about a day later that had all these volumetric calculations. That's how I knew how much mulch was there. He was able to show me that the company had put 99% of it outside of their designated environmental boundaries. And he did a whole lot of different stuff. And the information that he gathered and put together from that drone allowed me to basically state my case to the city, that the people behind me. And they had to move all of it. And they should have had to move all of it. It was blowing all over my building. It was really crazy. But that was my first real experience with drones on a commercial level, and that was like 3 or 4 years ago at this point. And I was very impressed with the technology. And I asked the guy, he had plugged the drone into some third party software and different platforms, and had done some stuff, and I was really impressed with it. So in regards to what you do at DroneQuote, now you're gathering information that helps solar panel installation companies bid on homes.
Yeah, so the model is a little bit different than that. We use satellite imagery initially to put together the quotes, and then once the quote has moved forward into a contract, then we use a drone to go out and survey the property on the homeowner's behalf. So the homeowner could see, this is what the condition of my roof is like today before anybody set foot on it. This is what the available space is, and it allows us to be more accurate with our post-sale design that goes to permitting. And then once the system is installed, we go out and we do a post-installation survey that we could then show to the homeowner, because most people don't climb their roofs to look at the condition of the roof after an installation. They just don't, right? Especially if it's a 2-story roof or a hard to access roof. And that allows us to make sure that the system was installed, or the roof was installed in a manner that respects or improves the integrity of the home.
Can you give us a breakdown on why that's better, faster, or cheaper?
So the quoting process is better, faster, and less expensive because everything is virtual. There is no, home-to-home visit that takes time and resources of driving around different towns, right? So that saves a lot of time and resources on the sales side to be more competitive in price. In terms of time for the homeowner, because we quote multiple, it's a marketplace, right? So it's an online marketplace. And because we quote multiple installers all at once, the homeowner doesn't have to sit through multiple presentations to get their pricing. They sit through no presentations, and they're able to have the pricing uploaded to the website and have an understanding of what's put together for them. And then, so that saves the homeowner the time of having to sit through multiple presentations. Then on the installation side, our drone survey can our drone can survey a roof in 15 minutes, where an installer might be there an hour and an hour and a half, depending on the size of the home.
Well, to me, the use case that we're talking about here is like one of the most perfect use cases for a drone. I mean, I don't think there'd be any other more perfect way of doing something than using a drone to fly over the roof and take pictures of it and measure it. Like, it's an amazing use case for a drone.
Matt mentioned earlier was, the grid pattern that this other pilot flew over his property. That would have taken somebody hours to survey in that manner, right? We do the same exact kind of flight. It's called the Northo Mosaic Map, and it takes a multitude images that are stitched into one image that you could zoom into at a very high degree, or get volumetric measurements, as this other gentleman did. Very efficient, very quick, and a lot less expensive.
So, and the main key with that is, and I remember talking to you about this a couple years ago, is with the satellite imagery, you're not able to fully gauge the pitch, or what was the downfall of the satellite image that the drone presents a specific advantage of? It had something to do with the pitch or the degrees of the roof.
Well, the satellite imagery isn't bad in and of itself, because it's still more than we had 10 years ago, right? But it's just a good understanding of the size of the roof, a general understanding of the size of the roof and the available roof space, and some, vent locations and other things that might obstruct panels or the roofing system in and of itself, right? So that's a good resource, but the drone allows you to be, very, very, very accurate and fine measurements down to, a quarter of an inch away from a vent, where you're not going to get that with a satellite imagery. And that's really.
Do you almost get like a 3D model out of
it?
You
do. You do get a full 3D model out of it. So not only do you get the top-down bird's eye view, but you get a 3D model. So if there are trees or if there are vents, you could rotate in that model and get a good feel for the height of that vent or that obstruction, that tree, that chimney, whatever it is. Yeah, you get really good data out of it, and you don't have to walk the roof. It takes you. This flight takes. I don't know, if I'm being super conservative, it'd take 10 minutes of time. And
the alternative is also fraught with human error.
Say again, please.
If somebody's manually doing this and walking the roof, it's also
human
full
error.
Of human
Yeah,
error.
Absolutely. And that's one of the things that I didn't like about getting on roofs is when I was on the roof, in order to be safe, you have to be paying very close attention to how you're moving, right? And sometimes you're paying more attention to how you're moving on the roof, or where you're stepping, or how you're stepping, that your measurement might not be as accurate as you would have liked it to be, because it's hot, the sun's shining on you, it's a steep roof, and you're 2 stories up, So.
Yeah, and I think one of the things here as well is out in Southern California, is there a higher percentage of Spanish tile on roofs too? Isn't there also like different materials that are a little different? Maybe I'm wrong, but some of you talk about. So I have a buddy that's a roofer, and he's explored some of this himself, and he said that much like you said, that one of the biggest liabilities his business has is putting people on the roof, and when you're doing that pre-contract and different stuff like that, here's the thing, man, it's like you're eventually going to slip and fall, and your roof's up there. It's not, I don't know, look at people's roofs, look at your own roof. It's got, I don't know, there's just a lot of different stuff. And then not to mention, you also have like weather conditions and things like that make it even more dangerous, and ladders. And
absolutely. There's a lot of risks with putting boots on the roof. There really is. And that's where I saw the opportunity in 2013, 2014 to introduce drones into the solar and roofing industry, because, nobody else was doing it. And still, to the degree that we are, nobody else is really doing it. And I just, in the in-home sales world, I had the opportunity to work with a lot of well-to-do homeowners, people who had homes that made my house look less than optimal, right? Less than desirable, I should say. And whenever I came into that kind of house, I'm talking about $2-3 million houses out here on the ocean front, right? My curiosity changed from how do I get this homeowner to buy to what can I learn from this homeowner? And I would always ask homeowners of that kind of background, what did you do in your life to be so successful? When I built rapport, right? And 9 times out of 10, they would tell me that they started a business. So when I saw this opportunity that the drones had to vastly improve solar and roofing, and I saw how well it was doing for me in my own, sales, I was like, holy smokes, these guys, these well-to-do people all have one thing in common. They all started businesses. So, and that was in 2017. And a few months later, you guys launched your Startup Hustle podcast, which really motivated me because you guys went over a lot of things in the beginning that I was barely, learning the hard way. And then here comes the Startup Hustle, Matt. And, it was a really good resource for me as a startup founder. So I really appreciated that, man. I really took a liking to your guys' show.
It's that Matt guy.
I wish I had a Sinuhe on my team because I would say the same thing.
It's confusing. Don't hire another Sinuhe. You won't be able to be Sinuhe at DroneQuote.net. Or you'll have to refer to yourself as the other Sinuhe.
That's true, but I will say this. You talk to a lot of founders. I mean, what percentage of those founders would you say of the more successful ones come from teams?
Well, we've spent a lot of time talking about that. And, I think that for probably the first half of my history as an entrepreneur, I preferred to be a solopreneur. And I think that over the years, the second half and working with Matt and doing different stuff, I've really learned to appreciate having the right business partners and co-founders. And speaking of which, you have a co-founder.
And I was actually meaning to give him a shout out, Riley Wiggins. Man, I love that guy. He's such an awesome partner to have. And I wouldn't be where I am today with DroneQuote if it weren't for him. So a big shout out to the Riley Wiggins out there, the one and only.
Yeah, and that's good. Now, when I hear about your business and I'm thinking about it from my own personal usage, I think the measurement of the roof and stuff like that's great. But I think what I like the most is the value of not having to sit through 5 in-home sales presentations. I mean, I think that, like anytime you have someone over to your home to come sell something, that usually it's never fast. And you talk about doing a whole bunch of them. I mean, Watson, I would imagine you'd feel the same way. Should turn your mic on, Matt.
It's an interesting dynamic because there's two ways you could do it, right? I mean, think about like carpet installers or something, right? You have the people who come measure the carpet, and that's all they do. Or in your case, it's like you're measuring it, but then you're also giving you like 10 different options of where you could get the best pricing from. And I'm going to guess at some point in time, you had to make that strategic decision about which way you wanted to do that. Or do you actually do both? Do you also service other roofing installers where you're just only measuring?
That's a really good question, Matt. Initially, we were trying to service both ends, but you can't be, and any entrepreneur out there worth any level of salt, right, is going to know that you can't be a mile wide and an inch deep. And when I first started, it wasn't DroneQuote, it was altitude imagery. I don't know if you guys remember that, but I pivoted from altitude imagery to DroneQuote because I wanted to offer all sorts of drone services. And there I was trying to reinvent the wheel. Nowadays, DroneQuote, we're not doing any of the service. Well, we do some of the servicing, but we try to pass off as much of it as we can, because we don't want to be spreading ourselves too thin, and we want to be able to focus on the sales or the sales aspect of it.
So is that where you generate money? Is it from the actual, like, the marketplace, or is it the service itself as the measurement tool for the installation?
So we generate our revenue from the marketplace, from the sale. So we operate in the same manner that a real estate agent functions, where the seller of the house pays the buying agent for finding that buyer, right? So we work in that same manner, and that's how we get compensated. So we go out and find a homeowner that's interested in solar or roofing. We help them make a decision and come to a buying decision, and then the installer that earns that business pays DroneQuote.
What's the average cost of a solar installation in Southern California?
I would say nowadays, because the prices of solar have come down, I would say it's anywhere from 18 to 22, maybe 25K. Correct.
1,000? See, that's still a lot.
It
That's
is
a big sale.
And that's why, I tell people, you don't want to have somebody come into your house and try to push you on a $25,000 sale in an hour and a half meeting.
That's my whole point. Yeah.
And do it by
Exactly.
time.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. Do it
right,
and work.
Right. Well, I went through this when I replaced the windows in my home, and that was like a $30,000 thing. I mean, that wasn't cheap, and you're looking at spending all this money, and you have all these choices, and like, it's seriously, name 3 companies that do windows. It's not something that you see every day. Like, you might name a couple, and you're like, shit, what do you do? And you got a whole bunch of people that are selling the same thing, and you got a service aspect of it, and all this other crap, and then and then it was a big job. It was a lot of windows. It was going to take, we ended up doing it in phases, but I ended up having 3 companies come by. By the time the 3rd place had come by, I was like, all right, I'm picking one of the 3 that's already been here, because I don't want to go through another one of these, like you said, this like hour and a half. And, they show up with this like suitcase full of window samples, and they're wanting to sit and like by my sink and like, look at the way the water. I'm like, it's a fucking window, guy. Like, God, it should be deflecting water. Water should bounce off of the window. Congratulations for getting glass right. And you're like, but I mean, I don't know, as someone that's, I think that sometimes salespeople either love other salespeople or instantly hate them, because you're just like, God, give me another break. So, okay. So now a couple other things about your business. Now you are, well, thank you for being a member of the armed services. I know that was something you were, how long
I was in the Army,
you were in the Army?
I didn't know there was other branches of the Army until I finished basic training, or the military until I finished basic training. I was like, what? I could have gotten into the Air Force? What are you guys talking about? No, not at all. I got sold. No, I'm just kidding. I loved it. It was the best thing ever, being in the Army.
So when it came from that, and you fought,
I did.
in Iraq,
I had the
right?
all expenses paid trip to Iraq 2 times actually.
I like I've always appreciated your sunny demeanor, Sinuhe. So what, from having a military background and fighting in a couple times in a foreign war, what did you learn about that? What have you taken from that experience into being an entrepreneur?
Oh my God. You know what? The number one thing I've taken away from that experience is that when I was in Iraq, I went during a very violent time. It was in 2005 and 6, and our job was to look for roadside bombs. So we were out there looking for trouble, right? And hopefully we'd find trouble, as opposed to it finding us, meaning the bomb would explode on us. But I remember if I'm being 100% honest with you, I remember being scared shitless sometimes when I was in Iraq. I'm like, oh shit, I think we're about to, everything's about to hit the fan. People are shooting, things are going off, and you have this adrenaline going through you, right? So you're literally in a war zone, right? So for me, I took away so much from that experience because I can reflect on that experience during the difficult times that we've had in our business. And anybody that started a business knows, it's not all rainbows and unicorns, right? There's been some really dark times we've had in our business where I really questioned my self-worth. Sometimes, when things aren't going right, and your decision making and how bad things are. And I compare that to having been in Iraq and being shot at, bombs going off, rockets landing, people bleeding, And I think to myself, man, I don't have it that bad. Even though we're going through whatever it was that was a difficult time in the past, I don't have it that bad. I can get through this. I've been through worse. Let me control my emotions. Let me calm down. Let me work on the things that I can influence and that I can control, because that's one of the biggest things. Working on that you can control, because most of the things you can't control, right? They're out of your control. So why stress about them? So learning to control my emotions, and then that last point, don't stress about what you can't control, and compare it to how bad you had it in the past. that's really allowed me to get through the darkest of times as an entrepreneur. And I'm so fortunate that I got to experience Iraq at its worst to have a real context for the rest of my life as to how good I have it. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, man. I mean, I always say nothing's good or bad until it's compared to something, and
Yeah,
there you go.
that's right. And that's it. Just having something really big to compare it to makes my life a lot easier when I go through, you know, the ups and downs of entrepreneurship.
You know, I've had a lot of conversations about the current coronavirus situation with a lot of people, and someone said to me, 3 or 4 days ago, they were like, it was actually Monday. They said, "You seem like you're really calm about this." I'm like, "Yeah, I've been an entrepreneur for a long time. I've been going through the blender, the grinder, the roller coaster, the ups, the downs, and after you process the surface part of any situation, you realize it's just another problem you've got to solve." And I'm not trying to downplay the severity, because it's obviously a big issue. But here's the thing: I can't cure coronavirus. I can't end stay-at-home orders. I can't do all that. So much like you said, it's, you have to kind of work within the context of what you've got. I think the controlling emotions apart is, you know, and that's the hardest part, because, you know, we are who we are. And, you know, like for me, patience isn't always my greatest attribute, but at the same time, sometimes you have to be a little patient. I'll give you an example. Just like for us, we had to see like how this was going to shake out with our customers at full scale. We had to do things like see what PPP loans were going to be like, and if they were going to happen, what the amounts would be. And then also, like, you know, having 190 global employees, you become, well, you talk about solar, well, you kind of become the energy receptacle for all the people that work with you. And the level of amplification that can occur, because if you, well, it's similar to, I don't like to I want to compare my job as a CEO to being in the Army, but if you have 189 panicking soldiers underneath you, that's not exactly great. Now, that wasn't the case with us. I actually I mentioned that energy receptacle. I was able to draw a lot of strength and honestly couldn't, and made it harder to control my emotions, because I was so proud of the way that everyone had stepped up. But yeah, I think that I've always really admired the people like yourself that have been in. I mean, dude, you were diffusing bombs. Like, well, if you can't like come out of that and look at an entrepreneurial situation and feel and be calmer than you needed to be in that situation, and then I don't know if we could help you. I mean, Matt, how many bombs have you had to diffuse recently?
Oh, seems like well, as a software developer, it seems like that's what I do.
Oh, you know, that's a good.
You just cut you cut the red wire, right? Isn't that?
I also create the bombs.
That's true. Well, I will say this, Matt. You know, when you're talking about, you know, being in a leadership position and showing the right emotion during times of duress, right? You want to be the rock that your soldiers, if you will, could turn to and turn to for peace of mind or guidance, right, during hard times. If you were to panic and lose your cool, your employees or the rest of your team, I should say, would reflect on that and give that energy back in a more panicked way, because the leader, right, is losing his cool. So good on you to keep it, right? But at the same time, it's a really difficult position to be in, right? To be in a leadership position where everybody's looking at you for guidance and you're responsible for the livelihood of that many people, right? When we were in Iraq, we had one of our leaders, he lost his cool during an attack. We started taking small arms fire and we started getting blown up. And he lost his cool. And he completely lost his cool. And when the leader of the platoon loses his cool, I remember my emotion. I won't speak for anybody else, but I was like, oh, shit. Like, he lost it. Like, we're all fucked. So, you know, you definitely want to have your leadership keep their cool. In this case, you mentioned, you know, the number of team members you guys have. Keep your cool, man. Good for you for doing that. Awesome.
Well, Well, and then a lot of those situations that, I think Murphy's Law is like, it's funny because I always joke about it, but Murphy's Law, the worst things will happen at the worst possible time is basically the overview of that. But the timing is, and I was encountered with that. I was scheduled to leave our office in Cebu, and I woke up the day I was supposed to address the whole company, and I was just completely overwhelmed with emotion. I was like, and I ended up, I called my wife as I was on my 5-minute walk over to the office, and I said, I don't think I can come home tomorrow. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, I think I got to stay here for a few extra days with these people because of the way that, this was really when this was I think the 12th of March. And that was when things were really getting kind of hot and heavy over there when it came to some of the decisions that we had to make. And I didn't feel like I could make those decisions. Well, being on an airplane for 36 hours and, then just all the other stuff. So it was kind of tough timing in that regard. And by the way, when Watson makes the bomb, all the wires are red.
That's nice. That's real nice. A real apply to step in. And last year we had a little hiccup with taking on a bad investor, which, initially I was elated to have somebody invest a sizable amount into our company. And I should have done a little bit more research on the individual. He was not necessarily the best person to do business with. And we learned a lesson that was a really tough lesson to learn. And I mentioned this because a few times I've heard you guys talk about, obviously more than a few times, but in past founders have mentioned, raising capital. And I was working so hard the year before last and last year, the beginning of last year, to figure out ways to raise capital because I thought that would take me to the next step. And that's actually what was a big hindrance for us in 2019. Had we not taken on this investor, we probably would have gone a lot further along in 2019, and we'd be even further along now that, the 2020 has gone into the picture with the bad juju that's taken place with COVID. Fortunately, we did bounce back rather strongly, I would say, and give ourselves a lot of credit for that. And also the DroneQuote model is completely online, and, the salespeople that work with us already work from home and are already used to remote working. So that was a big upside for us that we were able to capitalize on. But again, I mentioned this because, there's sometimes surprises or bombs for explanation that we were using earlier, bombs that you have to defuse, right? Or situations that you have to defuse. A lot of times they're of your own making. Just unfortunately, you think that one thing's a good decision for your business or for your next move, and it turns out that it wasn't. And it's, you have to roll with the punches. You have to keep a level mind, and you have to have the resilience and the grit to not give up and throw in the towel when it gets real shitty. Which, again, I mentioned to you earlier, I'm fortunate that I have the comparison to, real rough times.
So, wanted to ask you something else, and this is actually something we've never asked. As being there's some government assistance and different kinds of things that exist for entrepreneurs that are former members of the armed forces. Have you been able to look into any of that and find any of that useful when it came to building your business?
There's resources available. They're not too much different from what's available to the general public. I did look into that, and I did take advantage of some things, but it's nothing that I would say is above and beyond by a drastic amount than what the general public can get their hands on. So,
okay.
For whatever.
Yeah, I've seen a few things, and for those of you listening, as an employer, there are some various tax breaks, credits, stuff like that. For example, if you and once again, I'm not an expert on this subject, so don't take this as advice, but more of a suggestion for you to do your own research. But if you employ former members of the military that have been back from a foreign war but might not have had a job in a certain number of days, there's some different credits, and there's just some stuff. So look into it if you have some opportunity there. Have you found any type of advantage or built any business relationships around your business that are related to your former experience in the Army?
No, not necessarily. I do go hard on, being veteran owned business, and that does carry some level of weight with some people.
Yeah,
And,
sure. Well, that's part of it.
yeah, and I know that does earn us business with a percentage of the population out there. So I take a lot of that makes me happy, that I could do that, and that's a big benefit in and of itself.
And then I think since you've been around since episode 1, would you like the opportunity to beat Watson at Rochambeau?
Yeah.
You know what? Oh,
I want you guys to play right now. And for those of you listening, we can see each other on video right now. So I will be able to be the judge. And I want you guys. So I'm going to sit out because I'm retired. But all right, let's see it. I got to see it, right? 1, 2, 3.
Wait a second.
1, 2, 3, shoot.
You saw my card.
Right. You got to do it again. It's on the fourth one. Ready? 1, 2, 3, shoot. I saw paper. Watson, you are the worst, dude.
Yeah, you're below the camera level, man.
All right, let's try this again.
You're below the camera level. You're seeing my cards.
We'll call it 2 out of 3. Ready? Go.
1, 2, 3.
Oh, come on.
When Watson lost.
It's too hard to do this over video, I think.
Yeah, modern technology is great, but not that great. There's lag.
So, by the way, last night, my wife, we entered a lottery to put one of our kids potentially in a public school here that does Chinese immersion. And it's like, awesome. Here's the thing is it's far away. And so our daughter got picked. We won the lottery and we're like, shit. And here's the thing. We live right around the corner from the number 2 ranked elementary school in the state.
Wow.
So it's like literally 2 minutes or 20 minutes. But when Jill and I said, I want to go to the close one. She said, I want to go to the other one. I said, well, let's Rochambeau to see where it goes. And she wouldn't play me. She knows that I'm unbeatable. And for those of you that don't have a long history of listening in Startup Hustle, in the world's most unprobable event, Matt Watson literally lost, I think, 17 or 18 straight matches of rock, paper, scissors. And if you can figure out the mathematic probability of doing that, please, because I can't add that high. So
you guys were doing it for dinner a few times, right?
Well, no, yeah, Watson had to pick up a dinner tab on that once. The funny thing is it's always his idea. So he would sometimes beat me off of outside of recording, but God forbid that red light be on, because that was like the red light of victory. But no, it's been a while. He actually even bought me a t-shirt, and which, by the way, I found in my, I was getting rid of t-shirts, and I elected to keep that one in the closet. Matt, he gave me a t-shirt that says Rochambeau champion. Yeah, actually, I think his ex-wife gave it to him, and then he re-gifted it to me, which that's what happened, right, Matt? I'm positive that's what's happened.
I think so. I think the shirt was too big for me, so I gave it to you.
And then I was wearing it one day, and she came by the office, and I think he took some shit for that. So, all right. Man. So all right. Now, one of our newer but not so new traditions here on Startup Hustle is we like to end our episodes with what we call the Founders Freestyle, giving every founder a chance to have a freestyle moment on the mic and talk about either what they've learned, what they're planning on doing, or really anything in general. Sinuhe, that'll put you up. And what would you like to say to the world of Startup Hustle on the way out of this episode?
I would love to give words of encouragement because you're always going to have tough times, good times, in your business. There's always going to be the good and the bad. And, the level of grit that you bring to the table is going to make the difference between succeeding or not in your venture, right? Having the grit to stick it out when the going gets tough, but not being so stubborn that you don't pivot from something that may be not necessarily a good idea. So obviously still be intelligent and be as wise as you can with your decisions. But really what it comes down to, and I can say that I'm proof of it, is just stick to your game plan, be willing to ride out the rough times, And if you can partner with somebody, because like I mentioned to you guys earlier, I have a wonderful partner in Riley Wiggins, and I can say that I'm successful today. We're successful. DroneQuote will continue to be successful even during these tough times because of the model we built, but also because of the fact that we have one another. So I'm a big proponent of partnership, working with a partner to start up a business, and working with a partner who's going to have the same level of grit as you.
Master Watson.
I just want to point out that, I think Sinuhe is a good example of somebody who, worked in an industry, saw a problem, decided to go solve it. So there's a better way to do this. And that industry knowledge a lot of times is how entrepreneurs, scratch their own itch, solve their own problems, and create a business out of it. So I think it's great. I mean, that's what a lot of small businesses are, a lot of entrepreneurs are, and that's what we need. That's what creates jobs in the economy.
Yeah, I think the point that I got that I took away from this episode, and once again, Sinuhe, it's good to finally get you on here. I know that you waited quite a while for, we until the recent coronavirus stuff. We had never done remote podcasts. It was always an in studio experience, which we valued very much. And I still miss that because I like sitting across the table from everyone. It's maybe when that comes back, we won't be able to shake hands, and we'll have pictures 6 feet apart from each other. But I think the thing that I really heard, and let's just roll back here, is you're talking to a veteran of 2 foreign wars and a guy at that literally was looking for explosive devices to find them and clear the path for others. I mean, and this is someone that is saying to you, I've seen a lot worse, and I've been in a lot more tense situations. I've learned how to control my emotions, because being overly wound up, stressed out, tense, or losing your shit is not to your advantage. And there's I mentioned earlier is I've never attributed patience as being one of my strongest attributes, but as I come up on my 45th birthday this year, I have sometimes learned to hurry the fuck up and wait. And that's something that over this last few weeks, and I haven't had a history of time stamping episodes, but today's April 9th, and you won't hear this on April 9th. It'll be somewhere down the road from that. But had many people made a lot of knee-jerk reactions, there are people that are collecting PPP loans. They're scrambling to try to hire people back. There's fences that aren't going to be able to be mended. And, you have to be able to have it much like a commander in battle. You have to be able to make fast, decisive decisions, but sometimes you also just have to survey the landscape, see what's going on, get a gauge, see which way the wind's blowing, or whatever it is, and try to make a calm, informed decision. So, I mean, I really took that away. Once again, with us today, we had Sinuhe Montoya, the founder of DroneQuote.net. Go check out what they do and learn a little bit. Yeah, you can't see us, but I remember to wear camo today. Anyway, see y'all next time.